I had a student from Cobb that did a 5-week internship with these students, teaching fishing. He learned about them. He taught them basic reading skills. He's moved on. I don't know what he's doing now, but this was a valuable learning experience for him. But it's a mini micro compared to rejuvenating a whole community. So what do we do about student by student just service learning experience?
Things that they demolished. I wanted to know I didn't really understand what was the upcoming from after after you demolish the houses. Now, what are you going to substitute?
Well, I think they want to demolish the properties that are lighting the area so that it would be attractive for people to come and invest or maybe buy a house. Investors are more interested in the empty lot than a lot that they have to also demolish. So they're trying to really make investments. They're trying to make it easy for people to invest.
And it's a completely different culture. It's a completely different set of buildings. It's a completely different, you have your dollar stores and you have your gas stations and you have your different type of restaurants that members of East Cleveland are very comfortable with. Will they come over to that end of East Cleveland that it is gentrified? It is around the Cleveland Modern Museum of Art, and just really higher end type stores, you could say. I don't know if they're higher end. They're different, but you're exactly right. Are you pushing? Are they welcome? Are they welcome? Do they feel comfortable going there? I'm not sure, but it's a very different feel when you cross over that development there.
I recall as a student, we would have to show our ID to the police officers to prove if we were a larger number of African Americans in an area that we were students there.
When you were on the Case campus?
Yes. So again, and that's years ago. That was 1991 was when I graduated. Not too long ago, but it's a substantial period of time. So I'm wondering how much of a difference it's making. I'm also wondering how many of the Case alumni are moving into that area. So the products of your institution, are they, after they have this experience, is there tracking of the investment of these students, the students back into the East Cleveland community? So how many of the students from Case Western who are participating in this will then relocate to move into East Cleveland versus saying you've had a nice, conversation with me, the longevity in the development of the invested relationship.
The university taking on a larger project, I think is what they're saying is, can be embedded within the university and academically as part of that structure, but it also doesn't say that you don't also provide other students the opportunity to gain the concepts of citizenship and engagement. Not everybody at Case is involved in that project.
My question is, he's assessed that they're going to destroy this area. It should be. Yeah. But it's going to businesses. It's not going to homes. There are displaced people in the community.
Has everybody been around the table? Let's hear, just get a taste of what you're thinking and talking about.
We actually, Professor Pickett shared his experience of being a Case student, and that historically when he was there back in the early 90s, that there was talk about closing off the streets between Case and several of the streets in East Cleveland, just so that the residents wouldn't be mingling with the residents of East Cleveland, which was a very...
and other parts of Cleveland.
Okay, and other parts as well. So just glad to see that there's been some progress.
So glad.
Yes. And as well, there is, though, a concern at this point about University Circle and Case working with the citizens of East Cleveland, or are they working with city officials and city government?
That's good. Okay. So let's address that when we'll go around and come back. Good. That's very good.
The last thing that he pointed out, this is very close to home, is the idea that there are many cultural jewels in the city of East Cleveland. The theater, the Cultural Arts Center, Snicker Fritz, the Reese Library. In fact, that there's a wonderful program at Case with Upward Bound was surprised it wasn't featured because it also serves the Shaw High School members.
So how are those connections to the cultural identity
Yes.
of Queens Community being made? That's good.
We started out by saying the presentation really kind of emphasized and supported this idea that service learning really needs to be based on reciprocal learning between the parties. And it was clear that one of the major challenges is both this historic relationship, but also kind of the way the academic, calendar is structured. And so if you're thinking about long-term projects, how does that fit into it? I think that a challenge which also was identified is that, not all students would want to be engaged in this type of activity. Social work students may be particularly interested, but what about a music student or somebody like that? And so how do you think about the opportunity for individual students to be participating in a service learning experience that's beneficial to them, but may not fit into sort of the larger context? And then finally, I guess the question is to talk a little bit more about, from last week we heard how important it was that these activities benefited the university. We've always assumed that it's important for, to go out and help the community, that students could benefit in terms of citizenship, but what are the real benefits to the university that wants them to be committed long-term? So this is a school within the university that's in the lead, and the last slide talked a little bit about the other parts of the university, but how is the university really seen as benefiting from this type of engagement?
That's really good.
So there were a couple of concepts that came up when we were talking. One was kind of the idea that maybe the boundary of East Cleveland would just be pushed by creating this opportunity for economic development so close to Case that you're just kind of pushing the bad part
That's a really
further
good,
away.
Yeah.
And then a lot, and just based on the presentation, a lot of economic development would of course help benefit the city, but what about the citizens themselves?
Right.
Like, are they receiving kind of a personal growth opportunities?
Right. So that's good. What if the line just moves, right? And now there's a safe zone for Case, but a new line for other parts of the city, which I'm sure.
Byron, if I could just make one
sounds
more
good.
point, because I wanted Antonio's voice to be heard, because he was saying pretty much the same thing, and having gone to USC and in Los Angeles. He pointed out is how do you transform the neighborhood without pushing the current residents?
Good.
You've got this wonderful high-end area in that university circle. How comfortable is it for the residents to come in and enjoy it?
Good stuff.
And
All right.
lastly, I know it's one more, but as a Case alum, Preston was pointing out, so you have the students going into East Cleveland and engaging with their semester course. So as alum, are they going back into East Cleveland? Are they thinking of going back to live there? Are you tracking to see what kind of investment they're doing even after they finish their course?
Good. I can see a return visit for really delving into this. Let me just say a quick sort of in response to what you want to hear. You've heard me talk about, and there have been several faculty who've been talking as well about adapting a similar kind of committed, deliberate partnership with Central. And so these are the kinds of nitty-gritty things to get into. We've got a great working model to draw from. And I would just say, as you sign in, as we begin to do some of that thinking and dialogue, if you haven't already and want to be a part of that conversation, just put a star or a check next to your name, and we'll know to include you in those conversations going forward as well. So, all right, you got a lot to work with.
Well, I do have some of these points that I wanted to address that are here. And I just say a little bit about these. I think these are really the right questions. There does need to be an institutional commitment to cultivating a trusting relationship and that kind of partnership. And that needs to come from the whole institution, not just from a faculty member or even a dean of a school. So how do we identify ways in which the things that run counter to what we're trying to do actually are worked at? And I would say that our provost has taken the lead on this with strong backing and support from the president, and the provost scholars is an effort to invest the resources of the university in that. And he particularly had a vision for working with the schools and with youth. And what's in it for the university, I'll be explicit about that. We don't have the diverse undergraduate population we would like to have, and we have not been reaching our targets in that. And so one of the things is the university does not want to be seen as only a school for white suburban kids. And so that part of the Provost Scholars is if we can mentor these students, we'd love to be able to have them come and after from 8th grade, starting at 8th grade, and by the time they graduate, become case students. I mean, that's the university would love to have that. The university also is very concerned about safety. I think one of the things that was a telling point for President Snyder, and this is much like University of Pennsylvania with the West Philadelphia area, is that on a Sunday morning a few years ago, the week before graduation, on the Wade Oval Lagoon, right in front of the Museum of Art, 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning, a student was raped. And it was daytime, very public place, and there was this concern about, and there's always this concern about safety. Our students get mugged a lot, their laptops stolen, their phones stolen, and there's a presumption that the perpetrators are coming from surrounding neighborhoods. And so there's a very clear self-interest of trying to create safer neighborhoods around East Cleveland so that you don't have this impact in terms of crime. That's how the university would frame it, I think. Another self-interest on the part of the university, I think, is to, and this is again coming from President Snyder, is to change that view of the university as an ivory tower that doesn't care about Cleveland. We want to be a university that is of national prominence, doing work all over the world, but we also want to be relevant and beneficial to our own community. And East Cleveland is a place that has great need and has an opportunity to do that. So those are some of the explicit things. To be honest, it hasn't always worked out as well as we wanted. There's some backstories. The mayor, in working with the Cleveland Clinic, was trying to get some support for those meetings and didn't get the involvement that I think he wanted. And so, there's when things get touchy and sensitive politically, sometimes we back up. And so, and that's out of self-interest too. And so, I have to be, careful about that. But it won't work without commitment by the university. But we also need a community that's committed to partner with the academic institution. And so that's where we've worked hard, but we don't have the resident involvement as much as we'd like, in part because, and it started with, really with Jason Lair, who was the previous director of NOAA, the community organizing organization. He came and spoke in our classes, and he was very explicit with our students. He said, I'm not so sure about universities and what their intentions are, and whether they can be of value to the community. So he always held the university at arm's length, and was concerned about what good we could do. And so it was really about empowering residents and not needing the university. Our relationship with Travell, I think, is different than that, and but we do not see our partnership only with the city, and that's an important piece of that. I'm going to let you speak to some of the questions about is the bad part of East Cleveland being pushed away?
Well, as a mayor of the city that you're talking about, I would say, well, we have to do something to keep those pesky students from bothering all of our good residents. But no, there's room with the number of vacant and abandoned structures there are. There's room for an integrated community, really. And if there's any place that an integrated community can be built, it's a place where there's a demand for 3,000 new housing units that don't yet exist. There's a demand based on the number of people who want to be in University Circle for about 3,000 housing units. They're about 3,000 short. They will build those they'll build them in shoe boxes. They're building right next to RTA rapid tracks and squeezing them in places where they normally wouldn't be. There's a very dense and sticky situation, which is a good thing, that there's a place where people want to live. We believe in supply and demand. If there is supply, which we have, if there is demand, which there is, then eventually that's the catalyst, I think, for a market-driven, integrated neighborhood where you can have mixed-use housing, mixed-income housing, and people who really get along because they want to be there in a lot of cases. Because there are great neighbors. There are some bad ones, but from what Mark found out, the university students found out, and I found out, When you go door to door in East Cleveland, you find some of the hardest working, faith-filled people in the world. I mean, they've stuck it out in East Cleveland for decades. They've got to be fantastic people, and they really are. So I think that that there's room there based on market conditions, based on supply and demand, and based again on low cost, high value, that we can create that type of neighborhood without displacing a population, which is an advantage that we have that other cities did not. Does it benefit average citizens? Yes. CASE doesn't just work with city officials. CASE works through another person named Rhonda Williams with our students in the school district. There are programs within the school district, CASE presence of staff, mainly Rhonda Williams, within the neighborhood and within our community center, in the classrooms at the school as well. And Rhonda does a very good job of connecting with young people.